I never thought he would look at me like that. Not Kevin. Not my best friend of 3 years. Not the guy who used to bring girls back to our apartment and loudly pretend I didn't exist while I lay awake on the other side of the wall, staring at the ceiling and hating myself for caring. But that night, when his eyes locked on mine from across the kitchen, there was something in them that didn't feel friendly. It wasn't casual. It wasn't joking. It was hungry. And the worst part? I didn't look away. Kevin and I met sophomore year. We were both 22 now, both technically adults, even if neither of us had our lives together. We ended up roommates by accident, a last-minute housing disaster that forced us into the same two-bedroom apartment near campus. He was loud, confident, athletic, the kind of guy who walked into a room and didn't just get attention. He expected it. I was not that. I'm Brian. I keep my head down. I overthink everything. I say, I'm fine, when I'm absolutely not fine. I've been out since I was 19, but I'm not exactly waving a rainbow flag off the balcony either. I just exist. Quietly. Kevin knew I was gay from day one. It was never a big thing. He just nodded when I mentioned an ex-boyfriend and said, cool, like I'd told him my favorite pizza topping. That was it. And for 2 years, that's how it stayed. He dated girls. I pretended I didn't notice how good he looked coming out of the shower in just a towel. We drank beer on the couch. We watched games. We argued about whose turn it was to buy toilet paper. Normal. Safe. Until things started shifting. It wasn't one big moment. It was small stuff at first. The way he started sitting closer to me on the couch. The way his knee would press against mine and stay there. The way he'd hold eye contact just a second too long when we were joking around. At first, I told myself I was projecting, that I wanted something to be there, so my brain was twisting normal interactions into something else. But then there was the night everything changed. It was late, maybe 1 a.m. We'd both had a few drinks, not wasted, just relaxed. Music was playing low from his speaker in the kitchen. The apartment lights were dim, just the over-the-stove glow and a lamp by the couch. He was leaning against the counter, sleeves pushed up, forearms flexing while he talked about something stupid that happened at work. I wasn't really listening. I was watching his mouth move. And then he stopped mid-sentence. Why are you looking at me like that? He asked. My stomach dropped. Like what? Like, he exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Like you're thinking something. I laughed it off. You're not that deep, Kev. He didn't laugh. He just stared at me. And that's when I saw it. That look. Not teasing. Not confused. Focused. His eyes dropped to my mouth for half a second. Then back up. And something inside my chest snapped tight. I should have moved. I should have broken the tension. Said something stupid. Made a joke. Instead, I just stood there. Waiting. You ever? He started, then stopped. Ever what? My voice came out quieter than I meant it to. He pushed off the counter slowly and took a step toward me. And another. Until there was barely a foot between us. You ever think about stuff you probably shouldn't? He asked. My heartbeat was so loud I was sure he could hear it. All the time, I admitted. We were close enough now that I could smell the beer on his breath. Feel the heat coming off his skin. My brain was screaming at me that this was a bad idea. That I was misreading everything. That I was about to ruin the best friendship I'd ever had. But my body? My body didn't care. His hand came up like he was going to gesture while talking. Instead, his fingers brushed lightly against my wrist. Not an accident. Not casual. Deliberate. My breath caught. His eyes dropped to where we were touching, then slowly lifted back to mine. And that's when he looked at me like that. Like he wasn't seeing his roommate. Like he wasn't seeing his best friend. Like he was seeing a man he wanted. I had fantasized about that look more times than I'd ever admit. In the shower. In bed. In those quiet moments when he laughed at something I said, and I let myself pretend for just a second. But this wasn't fantasy. This was real. Kevin, I said, and it came out more like a warning than a question. He swallowed. You're not the only one who thinks about stuff, he said quietly. And then, God, his hand slid from my wrist up to my forearm. Slow. Testing. Waiting for me to pull away. I didn't. I couldn't. The air between us felt electric, like if either of us moved too fast, something would explode. Tell me to stop, he said. But he didn't sound like he wanted me to. I shook my head before I could think about it. That was all the permission he needed. His other hand came up, fingers brushing my jaw, hesitant at first, like he couldn't believe he was doing it. And neither could I. You have no idea, he murmured, eyes dark, how long I've wondered what it would be like to look at you the way you look at me. My stomach flipped. You noticed that? I whispered. He let out a low breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Brian, he said, voice rough now. I notice everything. And then his thumb dragged slowly across my lower lip. Not rushed. Not drunk. Intentional. My knees actually felt weak. I had never seen him like this. Never seen that restraint barely holding back something deeper. And suddenly, I wasn't scared of ruining anything. I was scared of not finding out what would happen next. Because the way he was looking at me, it wasn't curiosity anymore. It was decision. And I knew, the second his forehead rested lightly against mine, that whatever line we'd been standing on for the last 3 years, we were about to cross it. For a second, neither of us moved. Kevin's forehead rested lightly against mine, his hand still cupping my jaw, his thumb barely touching the corner of my mouth. I could feel his breathing, slow, controlled, but not calm. Not even close. Mine wasn't any better. This was the moment where one of us was supposed to panic. Laugh it off. Step back and say something like, we're drunk, or this is weird, or let's forget this ever happened. But neither of us did. Instead, he whispered, you sure? That was Kevin. Even now. Even with that look in his eyes. Always giving me an out. I nodded. That was all it took. His hand tightened slightly against my jaw, not rough, just certain, and then he leaned in the last inch and kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy or impulsive like I'd imagined it 1,000 times. It was slow, careful, like he was trying to memorize the feeling. And the second his lips touched mine, something inside me completely gave in. Because it didn't feel wrong. It didn't feel strange. It felt like something that had been building quietly for years finally snapping into place. I kissed him back. At first, it was tentative, both of us testing the reality of it. But when I didn't pull away, when my hand came up and grabbed lightly at the front of his shirt, something changed. His control slipped. The next kiss was deeper, warmer. His other hand slid from my arm to my waist, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. And that's when I realized something that made my head spin. Kevin wasn't experimenting. He wasn't curious. He knew exactly what he was doing. When he finally pulled back, both of us were breathing heavier than we should have been from just kissing. His eyes searched my face, like he was looking for regret. Still okay? He asked quietly. I let out a shaky laugh. If you ask me that one more time, I might start thinking you're the nervous one. He smiled, but the confidence he usually showed wasn't there. It was softer. Brian, he said, voice low, I've been nervous for months. That hit me harder than the kiss. Months. I repeated. He nodded slowly, his hand still resting at my waist, thumb moving absent-mindedly against my side like he didn't even realize he was touching me. I didn't know if it was just you, he admitted, or if I was just noticing things because you were there. But then I started thinking about you when you weren't around. My heart kicked hard in my chest. And that scared you? I asked. He huffed a quiet breath. No, he said. What scared me was realizing I didn't want it to stop. The kitchen suddenly felt very small, very quiet, very real. I swallowed. So what is this? He didn't answer right away. His eyes dropped to my mouth again, then back up. I don't know, he said honestly. But I know I don't want to go back to pretending I don't look at you like that. That look. He was giving it to me again now. Intense, focused, like I was the only thing in the room. And suddenly, I remembered every moment over the last year. The lingering touches. The way he'd watch me when he thought I didn't notice. The way he'd started choosing the seat next to me every time. You were waiting, I said quietly. For you to notice, he admitted. I shook my head, half laughing. Kevin, I've been noticing since the day you moved in. That actually made him grin. Yeah, he said softly. But you never did anything about it. Because you were straight, I reminded him. His expression shifted slightly, not defensive, just thoughtful. I thought I was, he said. There was something vulnerable in the way he said it that made my chest tighten. So what changed? I asked. His hand slid from my waist, fingers threading slowly through mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. You, he said simply. And then, after a small pause, and the way you look at me like I'm not a joke. Not a phase. Not something you'd regret. I squeezed his hand before I could think too much about it. You're not, I said. We stood there for a moment, just holding hands in the middle of the kitchen at 1 a.m, both of us looking like we'd just stepped into a completely different version of our lives. Then Kevin broke the silence. Can I ask you something? Yeah. If we do this, he said slowly, and it gets complicated. I already knew where he was going. You're asking if we'll ruin the friendship, I said. He nodded. I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. Kev, I said quietly, stepping closer again. I think we already crossed the risky part. His eyebrow lifted slightly. When I leaned in just enough that our noses brushed. When you started looking at me like you wanted me, I whispered. His breath hitched. And this time, when he kissed me again, there was no hesitation at all. His hand slid around my waist, pulling me fully against him, and the kiss deepened, warmer, stronger, like he'd finally stopped holding back. And somewhere in the back of my mind, one very clear thought settled in. This wasn't just a moment. This wasn't just curiosity. Whatever was happening between Kevin and me, it was only just beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Not because anything crazy happened after the kitchen. Actually, that was the strange part. After the second kiss, after the way his hands had tightened around me and the air between us had gone from tense to something heavier, Kevin had pulled back. Not abruptly, not awkwardly, just careful. He rested his forehead against mine again, breathing out slowly. Okay, he said quietly. If we keep going right now, I'm not going to think clearly. I blinked at him. Since when do you think clearly? He laughed under his breath, but there was something serious behind it. I mean it, Brian, he said. This matters. And that word hit differently. Matters. So instead of dragging me to his room like part of me had expected, he squeezed my hand once and said, let's not rush this and mess it up. Which, honestly, only made my chest tighten more. Because Kevin didn't rush anything he didn't care about. The next morning was weird. Not bad. Just different. I woke up earlier than usual, my brain immediately replaying everything from the night before. The kitchen, the kisses, the way he'd looked at me. For a full minute, I wondered if I'd imagined it. Then I walked into the kitchen and saw 2 coffee mugs already on the counter. Kevin was leaning against it, scrolling on his phone. He looked up when he heard me, and instead of the usual morning man, he gave me a small, almost nervous smile. Hey, my stomach flipped. Hey, I said back. There was a pause. Not awkward exactly, just heavier than our normal mornings. Then he picked up one of the mugs and held it out to me. Made yours the way you like it, he said. That shouldn't have felt like a big deal. But Kevin had lived with me for 3 years and had never made my coffee before. I took it. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us pulled away right away. So, he said carefully, we're not pretending that didn't happen, right? I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Please don't pretend it didn't happen, I said. The tension in his shoulders eased immediately. Good, he said. Another pause. Then, because I've been thinking about it since you went to bed. My heart sped up. Yeah. He nodded slowly, watching me over the rim of his mug. And I realized something. What? He hesitated for just a second. I wasn't surprised. That stopped me. What do you mean? He set the mug down and leaned his hip against the counter, facing me fully. I thought I'd freak out, he admitted. Or overthink it. But when I kissed you, his eyes dropped briefly to my mouth again. It just felt right. God. I tried to keep my voice steady. So what are you saying? I'm saying, he said, stepping a little closer. This isn't some drunk mistake. And I don't want to treat it like one. The space between us was smaller now. Not touching, but close enough that I was very aware of him. Okay, I said quietly. Okay, he repeated. And then he did something that hit harder than any kiss. He reached down and took my hand. Not quick, not hidden, just held it. Right there in the kitchen, in daylight, like it wasn't a secret. I squeezed his fingers back before I could think too much about it. So what now? I asked. He gave a small exhale. I want to take you out. I blinked. Out. He nodded. Like an actual date, he said. Not a we live together, so let's hang out thing. I mean a real one. I stared at him. Kevin, I said slowly. Are you asking your roommate on a date? He smirked slightly. Yeah, seems convenient. He's already here. I laughed, but my chest felt tight in the best way. Okay, I said. His eyebrows lifted. That easy. Yeah, I said. Because if I think about it too long, I'm going to panic and assume this is some temporary identity crisis. He winced. It's not. I know, I said. And the way he looked at me then, steady, certain, told me he meant it. The date was supposed to be casual. That was the plan. Dinner at a small place near campus. Nothing fancy. Nothing that would make it feel like too much pressure. But the moment we walked in together, something shifted. Kevin walked a little closer to me than usual. His hand brushed the small of my back when the host led us to the table. And when we sat down, He didn't grab his phone like he normally would. He just watched me. "You're staring again," I said. He didn't even try to deny it. I know. There was that look again. The one from the kitchen the night before. The one that made my stomach flip. "What?" I asked. He leaned back slightly, studying me like he was noticing things he'd somehow missed for years. "I can't believe I didn't let myself see you like this before," he said. "Like what?" His voice dropped a little. "Like someone I want." And the way he said it? Not joking. Not flirting. Just honest. I swallowed, suddenly very aware that this wasn't just new for him. It was new for us. And for the first time, the reality hit me. If this worked, everything would change. If it didn't, I pushed the thought away. Because when Kevin reached across the table and laced his fingers with mine without even looking down, I knew one thing for sure. He wasn't halfway in. And the way he was looking at me now, it was the same look from that first night. Only stronger. Like he wasn't just curious anymore. Like he'd already decided. The first date should have been awkward. That's what I expected. Kevin and I had spent 3 years sitting across from each other at tables, eating takeout, arguing about movies, talking about classes, work life. Sitting across from him at a restaurant shouldn't have felt any different. But it did. Because now every little thing meant something. The way his knee brushed mine under the table and didn't move away. The way he kept looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The way his hand stayed wrapped around mine long after the waiter left, like he didn't even realize he was still holding it. At one point, I caught him staring again. "You're doing it," I said. "Doing what?" "That thing where you look at me like you're trying to figure something out." He didn't deny it. "I'm just noticing stuff," he said. "Like what?" His thumb moved slowly over my knuckles. "How comfortable you are with me," he said. "I thought this would feel weird for you." I shrugged. "You're still Kevin." His eyes softened a little at that. "Yeah," he said quietly. "But I don't want to be just Kevin anymore." That landed somewhere deep in my chest. On the walk home, it was cold enough that our shoulders kept bumping. Halfway down the block, Kevin reached over and took my hand again. Not hesitant. Not testing. Just natural. We walked like that the rest of the way. And for the first time since everything started, I stopped waiting for the moment where he'd pull away. He didn't. The real shift happened later that night. We were back at the apartment, sitting on the couch, a movie playing that neither of us was actually watching. Kevin was closer than usual, close enough that our legs were fully pressed together. His arm was stretched along the back of the couch behind me. It was quiet, comfortable, but there was something building in the air again. That same slow tension from the kitchen the other night. I felt his fingers move first. They brushed lightly against my shoulder, then rested there, then slowly slid down my arm. I turned my head to look at him. His eyes were already on me. That look again. Focused. Steady. Not joking. "Can I ask you something?" he said quietly. "Yeah." He hesitated just long enough that I knew this mattered. "When you look at me like you do," he said slowly, "what are you thinking?" I swallowed. "Honestly, yeah." I held his gaze. "I think about what it would feel like if you stopped holding back." The air between us shifted immediately. His jaw tightened slightly. "Brian," he said, voice lower now, "I don't think I'm holding back anymore." And then he leaned in and kissed me. This one was different. Not slow and careful like the first time. Not hesitant. His hand came up to the side of my neck, fingers warm, steady, pulling me closer as his mouth moved against mine with real intent. I kissed him back just as hard. And the second I did, his other arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me fully into him until I was half in his lap. The movie kept playing in the background, forgotten. His thumb moved slowly along my jaw, down to my neck, the touch firm but controlled, like he knew exactly what he was doing but was still paying attention to every reaction I gave him. When we finally pulled back, both of us were breathing heavier. His forehead rested against mine again. "You have no idea how hard it's been not touching you like this," he murmured. My heart slammed against my ribs. "You could have," I said quietly. His hand tightened slightly at my waist. "I didn't know if you wanted me to." I laughed softly. "Kevin," I said, "I've wanted you to for 3 years." He went very still. Then he leaned back just enough to look at me. "You're serious?" I nodded. Something shifted behind his eyes then, something deeper than excitement. Something almost protective. His hand came up again, this time brushing slowly along the side of my face. "I don't want to mess this up," he said. "You won't." "How do you know?" I held his gaze. "Because you're not treating this like a phase," I said. "You're treating me like someone you actually want." That look hit me again. stronger than before, the one that had started all of this. He leaned in and kissed me again, slower this time, his hand sliding from my face to the back of my neck, holding me there like he didn't want any distance between us at all. And somewhere in the middle of that kiss, I realized something that both excited and terrified me. Kevin wasn't experimenting. He wasn't figuring himself out anymore. He'd already crossed that line. And the way his hand stayed on me, steady, certain, like he knew exactly where I belonged. I had a feeling the real complication wasn't going to be whether this worked. It was going to be what happened when neither of us wanted it to stop. The next few days felt unreal. Not dramatic, not chaotic, just different in a quiet, constant way. Kevin didn't go back to acting like nothing had changed. He didn't pull away. If anything, he leaned in. It was the small things that got to me the most. The way he'd sit closer than necessary on the couch, his arm automatically settling behind me. The way his hand would find the small of my back when we passed each other in the kitchen. The way he'd look at me sometimes, not casually, not joking, but like he was still surprised he was allowed to. Like he was still choosing this. Choosing me. One night about a week after our first date, we were both in the living room, laptops open, pretending to be productive. I was answering emails. Kevin was supposed to be working on something for his job. Instead, he kept glancing over at me. Finally, I sighed without looking up. If you stare any harder, I'm going to start charging you. Silence. Then, I still can't believe you're real. I looked over. He wasn't joking. What does that mean? I asked. He leaned back into the couch, one arm stretched along the back, looking at me like he was trying to explain something he hadn't put into words yet. I mean, he said slowly, you've been right here for 3 years, and I never let myself think about you like this. My chest tightened a little. And now? I asked. His eyes moved over my face, slower than usual. Now I notice everything, he said. The way he said it wasn't playful. It was focused, intentional. That look again, the one that had started everything. Later that night, I was in the kitchen grabbing water when I heard his door open behind me. I turned. Kevin was standing there, hands in his pockets, watching me. There was something different about the way he was holding himself. Not tense, just deliberate. What? I asked. He walked closer, slowly, stopping just a step away. I've been trying to be patient, he said. With what? His eyes dropped to my mouth for a second before coming back up. With not rushing you. My pulse jumped. Kevin, I said quietly, I don't think you're the one rushing. That seemed to be the answer he was waiting for. His hand came up, fingers brushing lightly along my jaw. The touch familiar now, but no less electric. You sure? He asked softly. I nodded. That was all it took. This kiss was different from the others. Not tentative. Not testing. His hand slid to the back of my neck, steady and warm, pulling me closer while his other arm wrapped around my waist, closing the distance completely. There was confidence in the way he touched me now. Not hesitation. Not curiosity. Like he already knew I wasn't going anywhere. And the way he held me, firm, careful, like I actually mattered, made something settle deep in my chest. When he pulled back, he didn't let go. His forehead rested against mine, both of us breathing a little heavier. I don't want to screw this up, he murmured. You won't, I said. He shook his head slightly. I'm serious, Brian. This isn't just attraction for me anymore. That hit harder than anything else he'd said. What is it then? I asked quietly. His hands tightened slightly at my waist. It's the way you look at me, he said. The way you've always looked at me. I swallowed. You noticed that a long time ago, didn't you? He nodded once. I just didn't think I deserved it. That surprised me. Kevin, you've always been the confident one. He gave a quiet breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Yeah, he said. With everyone else. His thumb started moving slowly along my side without him even realizing it. But you, he continued. You see right through me. And you still stayed. That explained something I hadn't understood before. The way he looked at me. Not just desire. Relief. Like he'd finally stopped pretending. We stayed like that for a while. No rushing. No pressure. Just standing in the middle of the kitchen, holding each other like it wasn't something new anymore. Like it was becoming normal. And that's when a thought hit me that I wasn't expecting. This wasn't moving fast. It just felt like it had been building for years. Because the way Kevin touched me now, the way he looked at me, it wasn't curiosity. It wasn't experimentation. It was attachment. And the way his arms tightened slightly around me before he finally let go and said quietly, "Stay with me tonight." I realized something that made my heart speed up. Not because I was nervous, but because I knew this was the moment where things would stop feeling temporary, where this stopped being something new and started becoming something real. I should have been nervous. That's what I expected to feel when Kevin asked me to stay in his room. Instead, what I felt was something quieter. Relief. Because for the last week, every moment between us had carried this unspoken question. How far were we really going? Was this temporary? Was this still new enough to disappear if either of us hesitated? But the way he'd said it, stay with me tonight. Not rushed, not suggestive, just honest. Like he didn't want distance anymore. His room didn't feel different. Same messy desk, same half-open closet, same gym bag on the floor that had been there for at least 3 months. Kevin sat on the edge of the bed, watching me like he wasn't sure if this was still real. You don't have to if you're not ready, he said. I walked over and sat next to him. I'm here, aren't I? That small tension in his shoulders eased immediately. Yeah, he said quietly. You are. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then his hand found mine. Not urgent, just fingers threading together, squeezing once. It was strange. After everything, after all the kisses and the way he'd been looking at me lately, this still felt like the most important part. The way he held my hand like it meant something. We lay down facing each other, the room dim except for the light from the hallway. For a few minutes, we just talked. About nothing. About stupid things. Classes. Work. The neighbor upstairs who sounded like he moved furniture at 3 a.m. Normal. Comfortable. But the space between us kept getting smaller. At some point, his hand moved from mine to my arm, then my side, then slowly around my back, pulling me closer until our legs were tangled together. I could feel his breathing change. Slower. Deeper. You okay? He asked quietly. I nodded against his shoulder. Yeah. A pause. Then, softer. You? His arm tightened slightly around me. I've never been more sure about anything, he said. That did something to my chest. The first kiss that night was slow. Not intense. Not urgent. Just his lips finding mine in the dark, his hand resting at the back of my neck, holding me there gently. It didn't feel like something new anymore. It felt like something settling. Like we weren't figuring this out anymore. We were just being. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. You know what's weird? He murmured. What? I thought this would feel complicated. I smiled slightly. And it doesn't, he said. It just feels like I finally stopped pretending. That explained everything. The way he'd changed. The way his confidence around me had shifted, not the loud, easy confidence he had with everyone else, but something steadier, quieter, real. We fell asleep like that. Close. His arm around my waist. My head against his chest. At some point during the night, I woke up slightly when he shifted. But instead of moving away, his arm tightened automatically, pulling me closer without him even waking up. That small, unconscious movement did more to me than any of the bigger moments. Because it wasn't intentional. It wasn't careful. It was instinct. The next morning, I woke up first. Kevin was still asleep, one arm across me, his face relaxed in a way I'd honestly never seen before. No tension, no guarded expression, just calm. I watched him for a minute, realizing something that hit me harder than I expected. This wasn't temporary. Not for him. Not anymore. And when his eyes finally opened, the first thing he did wasn't move away. He just looked at me. That look again. But softer now. Morning, he said, voice rough from sleep. Morning. He studied my face for a second. You didn't disappear, he said. I blinked. Why would I disappear? He gave a small, almost embarrassed breath. Because this still feels like something I'm going to wake up from. I reached up and brushed my thumb along his jaw. I'm still here. His expression changed immediately. Relief. And then something deeper. His hand came up, covering mine where it rested against his face. Good, he said quietly. Because I don't think I can go back to before. And the way he pulled me closer again, like it was already natural, already normal. I realized something that both scared me and felt right at the same time. This wasn't just a new relationship. This was two people who had been slowly moving toward each other for years. Finally letting it happen. Things didn't change all at once. There wasn't some dramatic shift where Kevin and I suddenly became a completely different version of ourselves. If anything, the strangest part was how normal everything started to feel. We still argued about whose turn it was to do dishes. We still watched stupid shows on the couch. He still stole my food without asking. But now, there were new things woven into the routine. His hand finding mine without thinking. A quick kiss when he walked past me. The way he'd sit closer than necessary, like distance, just didn't make sense anymore. It wasn't intense every second. It was steady. And somehow, that meant more. About a month after that first night in the kitchen, we were at a small get-together at a friend's place. Nothing big, just a few people from school, music, drinks, the usual. Kevin had always been the social one, the loud one, the guy in the middle of every conversation. That night was no different. Except for one thing. Every so often, in the middle of talking to someone else, his eyes would find me across the room. And every time they did, he'd give me that same look. The one that started everything. Only now it wasn't hidden. It wasn't uncertain. It was open. Intentional. Like he wasn't worried about who saw it. At one point, someone asked him something and he answered automatically, but his attention was still on me. I walked over eventually, standing next to him. Without missing a beat, his hand settled at the small of my back. Natural, unthinking, but very, very clear. And for the first time, I didn't wonder if this was temporary. Later that night, back at the apartment, we were sitting on the couch in the quiet, the city noise low outside the windows. Kevin was stretched out, my legs draped over his lap, while his fingers absent-mindedly traced patterns along my ankle. We weren't talking. We didn't need to. After a few minutes, he broke the silence. "You know what's weird?" "What?" I asked. He glanced at me. I thought this was going to be complicated. I smiled a little. "You've said that before." "Yeah," he said. "But I know why now." I sat up slightly. "Why?" His expression softened in that way it had started doing more often lately. The version of Kevin that only showed up when it was just us. "Because it was never random," he said. I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees, looking at me like he was finally putting something together. "I think I was already choosing you," he said slowly. Way before I understood what that meant. That hit deeper than anything dramatic could have. 3 years of choosing the seat next to you, he continued. 3 years of looking for you in a room. 3 years of caring way too much about what you thought of me. I swallowed. And when I finally let myself see it, he finished. It didn't feel new. It just felt obvious. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then I asked quietly, "So what is this now?" Kevin didn't hesitate. He reached over, his hand sliding to the back of my neck, pulling me closer until our foreheads touched. "This," he said softly, "is me not looking away anymore." And there it was again. That look, the one from the kitchen, the one I thought I'd imagined the first time. Only now it was steady, certain, not hungry, not curious, something deeper. Like he wasn't just seeing me. Like he'd decided. Sometimes I think about that first moment. Standing in the kitchen, his hand on my wrist. The way his eyes changed when he looked at me. I never thought Kevin would look at me like that. Not my best friend. Not the guy who dated girls. Not the guy who used to treat me like just another part of the apartment. But now he looks at me like that all the time. Not like I'm a surprise. Not like I'm a question. Like I'm the answer he didn't know he'd been looking for. And honestly, after 3 years of pretending I didn't want him to, I don't think I'll ever get tired of it.